The hard sayings of Jesus. Jesus' ministry on earth lasted 3.5 years. During that time, he said many things. Some of his words were soft and comforting.
Some were clear and straightforward.
But some of his words were just plain hard.
By hard, we mean those sayings of Christ which are either
A. Difficult to understand,
B. Stern or uncompromising,
or C. Sayings that, although clear, are hard to implement. In this video, we will tackle a few of these hard sayings. The goal is not to necessarily turn a hard saying into an easy one, but to help provide guidance to understanding and approaching them. Hard saying number 1. In Matthew 5, Jesus says,
"You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder,' and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment."
In these two verses, Jesus equates anger to murder, implying the murderous act the same as merely harboring ill intentions to one another.
Once, we may have taken comfort in that fact that we never physically murdered anyone. But how many of us have ever been angry?
All of us, perhaps, and likely not just once. By this stern indictment, we are no better than murderers.
There is no way to read this verse that can shrug away its hardness. In fact, it is a clear and straightforward passage, which makes it all the more haunting. But there is logic behind this hard saying. Actual murder begins with a thought.
Like a seed, the thought is planted and the ill intention is left to grow
Until it eventually matures, resulting in the heinous act of murder. In this context, acts of murder we read about in newspapers or magazines are merely the symptoms of an angry thought. By a similar vein, Jesus also states that the lustful thought is equivalent to adultery. Again, the adulterous act begins in the recesses of the mind from the wrongful desire, and the act of adultery is merely its outward manifestation.
While you and I may never actually be found guilty of a murder or adultery in a courtroom, we may have allowed these same seeds of wrongdoing in our minds. And to a God that sees the mind, they are one and the same.
Hard saying number 2. In Mark 9:50, Jesus says,
Salt is good, but if the salt have lost his saltness, wherewith will ye season it? Have salt in yourselves, and have peace one with another.
the hardness of this saying is in the second phrase. If the salt has lost its saltiness. Let me ask you a question. Do you test your salt first to make sure it hasn't lost saltness? Does it go sour like milk? Have you ever sprinkled salt on a pizza and found the salt had no effect? Of course not. Salt is salt is salt. It's a fairly stable mineral composed of sodium and chloride that doesn't lose any of its kick with time. So you may wonder, what is Jesus talking about when he refers to salt losing its saltiness? Well, to understand this passage, we have to understand what salt was to the Galileans. To them, it didn't come in a spherical container with those little metal spouts. To the Galileans, salt was rarely found in a pure state. Instead, it was often mixed with other substances generally found on the earth. However, as long as the proportion of salt was high, it would still serve its function. The earth, our world, can often be an unsavory place. Work, school, our neighborhoods can be filled with things that can dilute one's pureness of mind.
If a Christian were to mix too deeply with the things that are bad and unsavory, he or she could potentially lose that which makes them a Christian. In addition, salt supplies zest, seasoning, and can be a preservative for foods. Similarly, salt is a symbol for a vibrant, zealous, life-preserving Christian.
Even Paul commanded the Colossians to let your speech be always gracious, seasoned with salt. So take heed to this hard saying. Season your mind with the things of Christ, preserve your purity, and await zealously for his coming.
Hard saying number 3. The last saying we want to look at comes from Matthew chapter 5.
You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you not to resist an evil person. But whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also.
If someone assaults you, it can immediately stir thoughts of resentment and retaliation. But to go against our natural impulse and stop those thoughts, and to even offer the other cheek, as it were, takes this hard saying to a level that seems almost superhuman.
Originally, the law of Moses commanded an eye for an eye. This was actually a great step forward in its time. It imposed a strict limitation on the act of vengeance. When a member of Tribe X injured a member of Y, Tribe Y would feel an obligation to get back at X. In the heat of revenge, Y would often deal an even harsher blow to X. Now X, feeling unfairly injured by the retaliation, would attack Y again. This would devolve into a repetitive pattern of assaults between the two tribes, resulting in long-enduring feuds. But Moses' law prescribed a principle of exact retaliation, which would stop this pattern of violence and in place instill judgment and peace, an eye for an eye.
But Jesus' saying takes this one step further. He eliminates retaliation altogether. In fact, just when you thought things were hard enough, Jesus takes it up a notch with the following command: love your enemies. Wow, now it seems we're entering the realm of the impossible. But is it really impossible?
Fortunately, there is a solution. Because the earthly mind is limited, we must learn to put it aside. Let go of the fleshly need for revenge, and instead, we need to conform our mind to the mind of Christ. This is done through meditating on the Word of God and prayer. In addition, pray for those who persecute you. Nothing is impossible when we take on the mind of Christ, a mind of gentleness, humbleness, and compassion, while committing all our worries to prayer.
There are still more hard sayings of Jesus in the Bible to explore. We've only scratched the surface. These hard sayings can be tough to digest at first, but when we confront and overcome difficult things, we become stronger individuals, stronger Christians. Hard sayings are good for you.
So go on, explore them on your own, meditate in prayer, and when you need a helping hand, Jesus will always be there for you. Just remember, he also said, "To him that asks, receives, and to him that knocks, the door will always be open."
And that's not a hard saying, that's a promise.